Welcome to Mindful Live number 39. We are well on the way. Mindful Live number 39. It is currently the 15th of February. Today is what? Today is Tuesday, the 15th of February. Yes, Tuesday, the 15th of February, and it's the Mindful Live number 39. We're moving well along. And welcome. What we're going to start off talking about today, as usual, we're going to start off kind of referencing what I spoke about in my contemplation today. The money worries of the National Carnival Committee, the money worries inside of this whole taste of carnival business. Money worries. Tuco postpones Calypso extempo. Is carnival a bacchanal? When it comes to money, for sure. National Carnival Commission Chairman Winston Gypsy Peters was meeting with Trinbago Unified Calypsonians organization representatives yesterday afternoon regarding the National Calypso Monarch and National Extempo Monarch competitions. You know, if it's one thing you have to give this Mr. Gypsy Peters is the guy lands on his feet. He was in UNC politics for quite a long time, decided that he wants a switch and changed around to PNM politics, and apparently just as easily the PNM took him up as one of their own, and they're fine with that. And you have to give the man credit for that. He always seems to land on his feet. Now, I find something very strange about that. Though, for you to be watching this group and criticizing this group based upon their organizational structure, saying that this organization is evil, wicked, and has the worst intentions for Trinidad and Tobago, and then in the next couple of years for you to be under the same organization, I find those things to be very suspicious, and it makes me scratch my head a bit. But such is the nature of politics. One of our older politicians, had a statement once attributed to him that politics has a morality of its own. And I wouldn't say that statement is a prescriptive statement, but it is a descriptive statement. It's not saying that politics should have a morality of its own. That's not a good thing. We would wish that all politicians acted in the same moral manner that everyone expects regular people to act in. But the reality is that politics does have a morality of its own when you see it work out in real life. When you see how politicians act in real life, yeah, it has a morality on its own. Tuco announced the postponement of both events in a Facebook post on Sunday, pending further discussion negotiations with NCC. Upon conclusion of these discussions, a definitive position would be taken by Tuco, of which all members or participants will be apprised, Tuco stated. The preliminary round of National Extempo competition was supposed to be held yesterday. The NCC announced via Facebook yesterday that the competition will be postponed until further notice. Peters told the Express yesterday that the postponement was due to NCC's financial challenges, but added, "We're working on it." What I can assure you is that we will have an extempo competition, and we will have a calypso competition, and we will have the Marsh Gras. This was said by the chairman of the NCC, the National Carnival Committee, Mr. Peters. If Tuco does not want to have the Monarch, they, NCC, will produce it. Peters also said a total of $15 million has been allocated for events during a Taste of Carnival 2022. So that statement actually got Mr. Gypsy in a bit more trouble with Tuco, because Tuco was like, well, if he is saying that we're going to hold the competition, I guess he is now in charge of Tuco. But no, according to him, he says these competitions will still happen. However, Tuco says it just cannot happen. According to Tuco's breakdown, what they are saying is that they were given 1.5 million, I believe, and by the time they broke it down, the cost of the tent alone was something like $1.2 million. So they would have only had that $0.3 million left, $300,000 to do everything else left in the competition. And they were saying the prize money by itself was not going to meet that. Terry Lyons suggests $500,000. Meanwhile, reigning Calypso Monarch 2020, Terry Lyons says the winner should get $500,000. Now, to jump to Terry's defense a bit first, to jump to her defense. Some people are going to hear that figure and they're going to be like, wow, that's just too much, that's ridiculous, and I could understand that statement from that point of view. But if you are in the performing arts, you could understand that a winning performance in a competition like that could actually run you up quite a bit in expenses. Have you ever paid for a live band? If you're considering each member of the live band as a professional musician and you have to pay them for each time you go to practice and rehearsal, so let's say you want to get in 10 rehearsals before the event and you have to pay them each time you go to rehearsal. Let's say you have 6 members of the band and they're professional musicians. How much do you think you're going to pay a professional musician for each rehearsal? And then for the event itself, you'd have to pay each member of that band. Then if you want to hire dancing performers, etc., they would have to do rehearsals also, and then you'd have to pay them their performance fee. And then on top of all of that, you'd have to pay for the props, etc. So within that $500,000, it may be, according to the size and type of the competition, anything upwards of $200,000 in expenses being put out by a performer in the first place. So you could understand that price sort of from what she is saying there. She also suggested that the competition be deferred to March, or Calypso Fiestas, not a competition, be staged at the safe zones, including the Gardens, Queen's Hall, St. Anne's, or Naparima Bowl, San Fernando, which would ensure artists get some money. Lyons said it was mentally draining for the artists who are in the state of limbo as to whether the show would come off or not. And basically, the general idea that both she and I heard the head of Tuco was mentioning this, and some other performers were saying a similar thing. They were saying that the competition in and of itself forces and pushes artists and entertainers to do a different kind of thing. But if you want, as she suggested, Calypso Fiestas, as it were, just exhibition shows where you come and you pay the artists just for their appearance, you pay them some appearance fee, but you don't go into a competition where an artist would be expecting to win something at the end of this. And I actually understand this. I think if you're looking to have this kind of truncated thing where you have a limited budget, it's going to be very hard for you now to push onto people that, you know what we want you to do? We want you to come out in full performance gear and give us a full performance, and we aren't going to pay you for a full performance. I think that is going to be a bit more difficult, and it may be fair to consider it a bit more difficult. I think that may be a fair difficulty to consider, and I am kind of in agreement. Maybe we have fiestas and exhibitions, but a competition, putting people in a competition gear in that light, just doesn't make sense. Now, someone was asking, if these competitions don't go on, well then, what are the pods going on for? Well, according to the head of NCC, whatever they are going on for, they are almost sold out already. Now, I remember saying in one of the lives previously that I could foresee all of these pods selling out very quickly, and then we get to see the real skill, the true genius of the Trinidadian, where we will see what these pods may sell for on the scalper market. I will not be surprised if we see some heavy scalping going on with the pods, where we might see all of the pods sold out already, and then eventually someone comes in wanting a pod in the last minute, and they're like, well, you know how supply and demand goes. Well, the supply is all out, and the demand is kind of high, so the pod that was previously $1,500, well, the price has fluctuated upward. I will not be surprised if that happens. Savannah pods almost sold out. Gypsy satisfied with project. Tickets for 6-person and 9-person carnival pods at the Queen's Park Savannah are almost sold out, Chairman of the National Carnival Commission, Winston Gypsy Peters, said yesterday. He said the bulk of pod tickets purchased so far were for the medium and large band national pan competitions on Saturday, February 26th, and the Marche Gras on February 27th. So, for the person asking, this is where most of the tickets have already been sold out for. The Marsh Gras, which is supposed to be, if I know my Calypso history and my Calypso competitions correctly, the Marsh Gras is supposed to be the final of the Calypso Monarch competition. And if there's no Calypso Monarch competition, then are we going to refund people who are expecting that on the Marsh Gras? Interesting question. What would they pay for? What would people pay to go and see if these shows are not going to be held? Now, according to another article, I don't think it was in this article, I cannot remember which paper I saw that in, there was a report. I don't know how factual this is, but there was a report that reportedly around 12 million of the 15 million allocated by the government was already spent or was going to be spent in infrastructure by itself. If that is the case, then that leaves very little left for the performers. So if we have all the pods already paid for and people are buying out these pods because they expect a really nice show where you could stay in your pod and be exclusive there, I could see people liking that. I could actually see people liking that. And apparently some are, according to the NCC chairman. These things are being sold out, but the shows cannot pay the performers. So if you spend all the money on the pods and there's none left to pay performers for the show, then what are these people going to watch when they go in the pods? What are you going in a pod to view? The Marsh Gras 6-person and 9-person pods cost $1,000 and $1,400 respectively. The pods, which are 8x8 and 12x8 platforms with steel barriers, are also available for the Senior Kings and Queens of Carnival preliminaries on February 22nd. Tickets for that show are $500 and $700 respectively. Now, these statements coming here are from the chairman of this committee. He was saying, Mr. Gypsy Peters was saying, sometimes when you do things the first time, it wouldn't work out. But I'm happy that people are using us. But I was always satisfied with doing it because somebody has to start and somebody has to do something. We are operating in a pandemic and you need to do things. You have to find innovative ways to do things. Asked about the cost to construct the pods, he said he did not have that information at hand, but noted that not 1 cent was paid to anyone yet. All the things you see happening there are done on credit, he stated. So, everything done so far, according to the National Carnival Committee, is on credit. Now, I could believe that part, but the part I struggle to believe is that he does not yet know the cost of each pod. Let's think about this realistically. If you are the chairman of a committee that is planning a series of events, and as it were, the signature for these series of events is going to be the boxing ring constructed to hold these people in. The number of people that can be held is going to be limited by the number of these boxing rings that can be built. The entire monetary makeup of this event is going to be contingent on the cost of building these pods versus the price of selling them or selling the tickets for them. I think that is a crucial thing to know. Asked about the margin of profit the NCC expected to earn from the sale of pod tickets, Peters said he couldn't say. I don't know if it is profitable. Not all the things we do for Carnival are profitable things. Some of these things are done for the social benefit. There are some things that we do and make money, and there are things that we do for the benefit of the people, he said. I have so many problems with that statement right there. I have so many problems. The head, the chairman of the carnival committee that is hosting this carnival, Taste of Carnival business, is saying that, and I quote, "I don't know if it is profitable." How does that make even the remotest amount of sense? How are you putting on an event and you have no idea about the profitability? Now, he is right. He pointed out after that there are several things we do that isn't about the profit. It's about the social benefit in it, the cultural benefit even, and grand. Great. I don't mind that. I don't argue with that. I agree there are many things we do in society that isn't directly about the profit we gain in this. Fine. Grand. But still we would like to know what is the breakdown of how much we are spending on this. What is the profit margin of this thing? How much do people value it versus how much do we value it? So, okay, if we are willing to pay $15 million for this thing to happen, okay, we value it, the country, by the government, by extension, the country, value these events at a $15 million rate. Okay. Now, I would like to know what rate, what value does the open market, does the Trinidadian open market put on this same event? Okay, we know we value it at 15 million from the governmental point of view. I would like to know what is the income value of this. That's how we make good governance. What's this nonsense about you have no idea if it's profitable or not? Okay, it doesn't have to be profitable, but I think you should at least know if it is. Shouldn't you? Shouldn't that be common sense? And here's the thing. Okay, if we're doing this for the social value, if we're doing something unprofitable for the social value of it, then I would hope that the vast majority of the resources spent on this social beneficiary thing, yes, I know Jesus is Lord, unruly King. Strange name for someone saying that, but thank you. Yes, I know that. Thank you very much in the chat. Yes, and I find it so strange. If you're going to spend on this social benefit out here, then shouldn't the vast majority of the money be spent on the area that gives the social benefit? If it's just about the social benefit, then don't spend $12 million out of the $15 million on infrastructure, making pods and fancy places to stand. Spend the entire $15 million on socio-cultural aspects of the events, so that maybe we don't even have to have an audience. Maybe we don't have to figure out some other way to do this audience. Spread them out across the entirety of the savannah. Good night, Richard Globman. Spread them out across the entirety of the savannah. Let them stand 6 feet apart or something that costs cheaper, and then take all 15 million and spend it in the social benefit area. Good night, Flo Christopher. And the thing is, this isn't a unique idea. I saw this proposed by some of the union heads since last week, where they were saying, well, if we're having some problems with this Taste of Carnival business, and we want to make sure that the workers inside of the entertainment industry and the cultural aspect get a bit of the pie, well, then split it up and give it to them. But if you're saying, well, we want to do this, well, what we really want to do, and this is one of the trademarks of government. So government, I am the government here. And what I really want to do here is I want to give money to J. Chris inside of the live chat over on TikTok. I want to give J. Chris some money. All right. But I don't just take out the money. Unruly King, you will be muted. I don't just take out the money and give it to J. Chris. No. I say, I want to give the money to J. Chris, so I am going to hire somebody. I am going to hire Unruly King, who seems like he loves chatting inside of the chat so much. I am going to hire him, and he is going to create a festival where he could hire J. Chris and then pay J. Chris some of that money. But when I do that, I give Unruly King $100, and he hires J. Chris for $20. and keeps 80 of the dollars for himself. Well, if I really wanted to give J. Chris some money, why didn't I give him the entirety of that $100? I don't understand this whole wrong the world method. Well, I do understand it actually. I'm speaking facetiously. I don't understand this whole wrong the world method they use where they give it to a committee who must hire this and hire that and hire the other, and then they do this ultimately, they say, to help these poor people. And those are never the people who seem to get the resources. Unfortunately, that seems to be the modus operandi of our government. And it's the bureaucratic way. It's the bureaucratic way. It's the bureaucratic way of doing something where instead of finding the direct route, we find the route where we could pay as many people along the world, along the way. We find that that's the route we want. If we want to dig a hole, we don't just go pay one man with an excavator to dig it. By no means. We must find how many people we could pay in the entirety of the system before we get that one hole dug. And that seems to me to be the Trini way of doing things. Unfortunately. Unfortunately. The earliness probably catching some of the everyday viewers off guard. Jaker is saying over in the live there. Possibly. There have been some times where this is the time where I am actually now starting, but we are upgrading, we are moving up, we are getting better with this time arrangement. The idea is for us ultimately to be starting the Mindful live sessions at 9 p.m. But as of right now, that time varies between 9 and 9:30. 9:30 being the latest, usually somewhere in between that time frame. We're giving ourselves, and I'm speaking in the plural on purpose, we're giving ourselves that nice wide half hour time margin. And as usual, this would be as good a point in time to see this. As good a point in time to see this. If you miss out any of the lives, if you miss out any of the content, and you would like to find it back, you'd like to catch back what you missed, go over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over on YouTube. I am currently streaming there too. But the great thing about the YouTube live is that the lives are stored there. For your benefit, you could go back and review whatever was said on any previous live. You could listen at it 2 times speed. That, to be honest, that's how I listen most of my YouTube content, on 2 times speed. So listen on 2 times speed, hear me rant at double the speed in your ears, and listen out any of that content. Listen out any of that content. Go over to YouTube, Nathan Springer on YouTube. Make sure to hit that subscribe button there if you miss anything. What is the topic? I do not know what you're speaking about there, Mr. Positive Radiation. We were speaking about, yes, Kyle Edgehill. There was that slip up. We were speaking previously about the taste of carnival and how our government generally seems to function with these kinds of things. But now we're moving across to hearing how the Prime Minister himself speaks about how the government functions. And when I read this article, I wondered if the Prime Minister, if Dr. Rowley, was inside of the live last night. Because coming down to the end of the live last night, I was speaking to the chairman of the Tunapuna Regional Corporation. He was inside of the live, and we were speaking about the difficulty of doing business, of getting things done inside of this whole bureaucratic government system. It's very difficult. And even he himself was complaining about this, lamenting about this. He was speaking, maybe we could do some content to actually help people in understanding this. But then, lo and behold, the Prime Minister was saying some of the same things. Rowley says, Constitution no longer appropriate for 2022. After hearing of the difficulties the Nutrimix Group underwent to open its next generation hatchery, the Prime Minister said parts of the Constitution are no longer appropriate for Trinidad and Tobago in 2022, as it hinders trade and investment. Dr. Rowley said changes have to be made because decision makers, from politician to public servant, do not realize the far-reaching consequences their unawareness or unconcern have on investors and the country as a whole. As one of the changes, he is suggesting that permanent secretaries possibly be allowed to come from within the private sector to provide that much needed ease of doing business. Dr. Rowley says, and this is a quote from him directly, "We require some significant changes in the public service of the 21st century. But if I mention that, the response I am most likely to get is that I am threatening the Constitution, because the Constitution says how the public service should be managed. I say here today," well, he was saying there whenever that was, "the TT Constitution that was written for us in 1962 in many areas is wholly inappropriate for a TT in the 21st century, 2022. He said on Monday as he opened the $60.2 million hatchery at Brechin Castle, Couva. And I agree with him. Good night, interesting. Good night, Empress Roni. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome all in the live. Mr. Positive Radiation, that talk you're talking there is not the topic we're on currently. His comments followed the group CEO Ronnie Mohammed's lamentation about the time it took to complete the process owing to numerous obstacles faced, mainly from state agencies. The project was initiated by his late father, Shahid Mohammed, before 2010. So the businessmen in this case were lamenting. They were saying that government makes business hard in this country, and this is something we all know. This is something that many people have lamented about, many people have complained about, and it seems kind of ironic to me that we have our prime minister who is agreeing with everyone that this is something that warrants complaint. He is saying he understands this and he finds it hard to work with too. Now, the thing that good evening South Trinity 26 in mass, one of the things that I find so strange is if we have a prime minister saying that this constitution and the way our country runs, the way our government runs, isn't working best for our citizens. If we have the opposition that obviously agrees with that, they say that any chance they get. If we have a general public that also agrees with that, we almost always say the same thing. Then why do we live in this system? It's like all the living parts of the system are left as prisoners, as slaves to the dead part of the system. We're living inside a system where we're saying what's really at fault is the underpinnings of this system. The constitution we have is outdated. We need a new thing that would run this country better and more up to date. Okay. Everyone agrees with this. So then how are we still running on the old constitution? The prime minister is making laws and legislation daily. He has an attorney general, and it seems like none of them has this on the front burner. If they all agree with the same thing, then I think this should be one of the top things we're talking about in the country. I have a question. Can Arawak and Nutrimix supply the demand for chicken nationally? No imported chicks. I am not sure if they can. I would love it if they can. But in this case, this hatchery that they opened over there in Couva, this was from Nutrimix. This hatchery would hopefully, good night and point as usual. Thank you, Foxy Brown. This hatchery would hopefully provide a lot of that local supply. Provide supply for a lot of that local demand. Sometimes those obstacles are simple decision making in the public service. This is Dr. Rowley speaking here. It is often we are unaware, especially if we are office holders, unaware sometimes, unconcerned that a simple decision, which in the office is not something that is just this or just that, but can have far-reaching consequences for a huge number of people and the country as a whole. That is so true. That is so true. Everything you said there. Very often, the case is that the office holders don't pay much mind to the decisions they're making. They don't understand that these decisions they're making have far-reaching implications to many people inside of this country. The analogy that I drew about the government last week, I believe it was, the analogy I drew was the government is Gulliver. I don't know how many of you pay attention to your old books, Gulliver Travels, with the giant inside of the country of tiny men. And that's the government. The government is a giant among tiny citizens moving. And every step the government takes, every decision they make could be the crushing of an entire family, could be the death of thousands of people. That's the power of a government. They have that kind of power. And because they have that kind of power, they should be very careful about every step they take. You can't just be stumbling. If the government as a giant makes a stumble and falls and ends up rolling down a hill, that could be the decimation of a whole community. Think about it. Think about the analogy of a giant in this situation, and that's the government. And what's happening here, the Prime Minister is admitting, and this is something that we have witnessed for a very long time. The government is a giant, but the people in control of this giant but they don't seem to have a firm grasp of the understanding of the far-reaching implications of this. So it's like a giant where the foot of the giant is controlled by one of these regular tiny people inside of the society. So they only control the foot. So by them just twitching the foot, they're saying, well, what I am doing doesn't have that large of an impact. But when you work together with this entire governmental program, or you don't work together with it, so you're the foot. All you do is you control the foot as part of a government worker. You're in the public sector and you're in charge of the ankle of this giant. Now, you're lazy and you do nothing. So this ankle has the proverbial arthritis. So now when this giant walks, he's dragging along this foot that you're supposed to be checking into. You're the ankle, remember? So now he's dragging along this foot, making a large channel, digging a drain, digging a river in the tiny people's country. Or decimating someone's home, dragging along his limp foot because this lazy ankle isn't working. And that's what we're seeing in the public sector. We're seeing parts of the public sector where they don't take their job very seriously because they're saying, well, this is the entire public sector. I don't think about that. I don't have to pay attention to that. But the consequences of their actions are far-reaching. And the Prime Minister himself is admitting this. He said the slow pace of the process usually comes from a lack of vision in the public service because many of the decision makers do not associate themselves with the outcome of their day's work. Exactly. There's a huge suite of decision making in this country that needs to be modernized, starting with how does one become a permanent secretary. Today, people at the level of PS in Titi, many of them have not had the pathway of the experts we had before in the post of PS. Many of them are not managers and do not assume managerial responsibility for the departments that they head. That impacts so importantly on the day-to-day lives of persons, whether you are investor or a consumer. So he is blaming that unelected group inside of the public service. But politicians can make good decisions and public service can mess them up. That is correct. That is correct. So what he is talking about there is if you were in the US, for those of you who pay attention some amount to US politics, that's what some people call the deep state. It's that unelected part of the government. The part of the government when, as you vote and the government changes every 5 years in our case, there are parts of the state, there are parts of the government that remains there. There are people inside of some ministries, inside of the government that have been there for the last 30 years doing nothing for the last 30 years. And they cannot be gotten rid of. You cannot fire them. It's nearly impossible. It's just short of impossible. So that's part of the problem. When you have these people that are put in there that you can't get rid of, that have no care for the business of the country, that doesn't really affect them. They're getting their salary regardless of what they do. Whoa, Matthew Kameho. It's been a while, bro. Whoa, what's up? And that's what he is saying is part of the problem that we are facing. That kind of sticking up inside of the system is because of some of those people. Now, on his side, it could just be that he's throwing that hot potato a little away from him. That when you see problems, it's not my fault. It's not the fault of the executive inside of the politics. No, it's not our fault. It's the fault of those who are supposed to be executing the actions. Not the fault of us who are making the decisions, but those who are supposed to be on the ground, the administrators, they aren't doing the jobs. And okay, if you say so. There's another instance of this that I see. It seems so ridiculous to me. It just doesn't seem to add up why something like this would happen. To just make the scenario, make the scene, paint the scenery before I start this. I would like it known. I don't really like the idea. I didn't really like the idea, and I think I said this before in a live, of when Carney 1975 Limited closed down, that they gave all the workers basically money, a house lot, and 2 acres of land. That's just unsustainable. If a company goes belly up, if a company busts, that's not generally how it works. It doesn't work like that. That was a political football that was done that way to try and score political points. It failed anyway at scoring the political points. It just worked to disrupt the distribution of wealth inside of our country. I didn't like that idea, but the decision was already made. It's a decision that has already been made, and these people were supposed to get the things that they were promised. Unfortunately, 19 years out, and quite a few of them are saying we still haven't gotten our lands. And when the Prime Minister went to open that particular hatchery, they came out in front of his motorcade. Well, not in front. They lined the road as he entered, and they made it known that they want their lands now. And we have a response now from Mr. Clarence Rambarat. He's telling these ex-Carney workers the government is working to distribute land. He's the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Clarence Rambarat, has sought to assure former Carney workers that the government is working to uphold its promise to distribute lands as part of the Voluntary Separation of Employment Package, the VSEP. I don't understand these things. These things are just beyond my understanding. The government promised the people a house lot, 2 acres of land. The government has all the land. The government has all of the house lot land. The government has all of the agricultural land. What is the delay in getting some people to draw up and say, okay, this goes to this person, this goes to this person. We have a list of all the people it should be going to. All right, bam, 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 and perfect, it's done. What is the difficulty in this? I would really like some government ministers to come and speak to me, because this is just beyond me. How is something like this so difficult? 19 years out. And the people are complaining that many of the people who are waiting on their land are dead. Yes, that very same thing you are saying. They are saying that many of the members in this specific case that have been waiting on this from the government have passed on. They have died waiting on this thing. So now, so now, whenever this does happen, the government is going to be creating friction in some of these families, because now they're going to be dropping assets from a dearly departed loved one that is going to be now having to be distributed among their living loved ones. So would they have had to have written a will saying who is going to get their land that they haven't gotten yet? It's ridiculous. Rambarat, Travis Paltu says Rambarat copies and pastes that response for almost anything and everything. Well, it's not only him, to be fair to him. Nearly every government minister says that. When you actually corner them to get an answer, well, they say we're working on it. Richard Glubman asks, was it supposed to be leased or owned? I believe, according to the original rules, the agricultural land was supposed to be leased for 99 years or how much ever, and the house lot would basically be owned. But I don't even understand that fully because I've read our constitution. Our constitution says that state land cannot be sold. So basically all state land is supposed to still be owned by the state as far as I could tell. So who knows how that happens eventually. But when the partnership was in government, they changed and tweaked some of the laws, some of the rules with that allowed the people who had the agricultural land, because originally the agricultural land was basically you could have worked the land, but you couldn't have sold it and used it as collateral or any of those things. It wasn't yours. The UNC tweaked something in it that allowed people to get deeds, and they were able to sell that land, and that was pulled up into that entire bacchanal now. But that was only for the people who got it. There were some people who got it, and that's the cruelty of the government all how. Okay. I didn't like the idea of them giving it in the first place. I found the principle unfair anyhow. Every company, many companies close down. Many of the people don't get those things. You cannot just give some people that, and companies are closing down every day and they're getting nothing. So that's ridiculous. But all right, it's already unfair that you gave these workers this and some workers didn't get it. Okay, but you've already done that. But then to compound on that unfairness, now you have the case. Now you have the case where these workers, some of the workers got it and some didn't. So to compound on the unfairness, some getting it, some ain't getting it. It's unfairness compounded. It's ridiculous. And I don't understand. It's just beyond me. How does something like this happen? Why can't this is where this social media kind of thing comes in better. Like I was speaking to telling the chairman of the Tunapuna Regional Corporation. This social media provides an opportunity for many citizens and for many politicians. Okay, in the short kind of news sound bites, you cannot give a good description of this. But I would like, please, someone who is in charge of this. Social media has enough bandwidth. Don't worry, you are not going to fill up the cloud for any one of these social media sites. You could make a 3-hour long video. Come on alive sometime. Please, one of you ministers, come on alive and tell us, okay, this is why this doesn't work. Tell me why. Tell me what is so difficult. Tell me, hi, love can make me. Tell me what is so difficult. What is the holdup in getting land that the government owns signed over to people that the government has already agreed they're going to give it to? Where is the difficulty in that? It's just beyond me. It's not like we don't have lawyers at our disposal. There's an attorney general's office. That is someone hand-selected to be the legal representation of the government. And in case there aren't enough lawyers in the attorney general's office, they have a budget where they could go outside and hire more lawyers. So is it that they don't have enough lawyers that they cannot do the legal aspect of dispersing this land? I highly doubt it. Is it that they don't have the land? I highly doubt it. Is it that they don't have the paper to print the deeds on? I highly doubt it. So, can someone of these politicians please explain, how does something like this happen? Where is the holdup in something like this? What causes it? Who can we point to? Who can we point to and say, okay, that's where the holdup is happening. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's because of this specific situation. It could be geographic discrimination. Yes, it could be, and it seems like that is kind of the tone that some of the people complaining about it are speaking with. Some of them have been pointing out how they've been asking for this for quite some time now. When this PNM government first came in, they promised that they would see about this, and according to some people, they're seeing no movement in this. And I live in Central. I know some people who are waiting on these same lands, and as far as I could see, there hasn't really been much additional distribution since this government has come into power. Here's the thing. If you're saying that you don't want to give the people, well, carry it to court. Make sure that you could have some reason and some grounds for not giving them, and let's get this quashed and finished for once and for all. But if you are going to give the people, well, then just give them. What is the point of hold up? This could be actually holding up the country, because these people could be doing valuable things with these assets that they're supposed to be that they are supposed to have already in their possession. Who knows how many buildings could have already gone up? Some of these carny workers probably have two generations down, looking for somewhere to live, and if they had this house lot, well, they would have had that. Nathan, who owns Nutra Farms? I'm not sure. I believe it's Nutramix, and if you're asking who owns Nutramix, I believe it's the Mohammeds who own Nutramix. Is the thing with land regularization in Tobago. Good night, Wendy Medium Excel. Always nice to see you in the live. All right. Moving on to the Prime Minister spoke last week and brought up a study pointing out that the Venezuelan trafficking issue, where there have been thousands, maybe tens of thousands of young Venezuelan women, many of them underage, many of them minors, many of them girls, many of them children, being trafficked in and through Trinidad and Tobago. And from the Venezuelan study, the conclusion was that one of the hotspots for this activity was in central Trinidad, more specifically Shoguanas. But apparently the Shoguanas business sector chamber had a problem with this. Prostitution not just in Shoguanas, says chamber head. Obviously. Describing as unfortunate the statements made by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley about prostitution in the borough, President of the Shoguanas Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Richie Sukai, says such statements had the power to hurt people economically and should have been backed up by statistics. Well, Mr. Richie Sukai, maybe you're in the live there. If you are in the live there, I went through the Venezuelan study. If you'd like the statistics to back up that, you can go look at the Venezuelan study. And in their study, they have people arrested. They have the names of the people and the groups where they arrested. The prostitution and trafficking rings where they arrested. Where these entire rings were set up with the sole purpose of trafficking people to Trinidad and Tobago. And when questioning people from these rings, they found out after some investigation that many of these people go to Shoguanas region. That's where the evidence came about. So if you have a problem with Shoguanas being highlighted as a center for prostitution, the answer to that isn't to complain and make sure that no one mentions that, but to do something about it. Maybe, just maybe. In an interview, Sukai said, Shoguanas is not the only area in the country where prostitution exists, obviously. No one said that. They just highlighted that it's the hot spot. He said the CCIC and the business community in Shoguanas have collaborated with the Central Division to fight all criminal activity within the borough. While prostitution may be one of these illegal activities, statements concerning the pervasiveness of unlawful activities in particular regions should be accompanied by statistics. Okay, Mr. Sukai. If you're saying that you all have worked hard for this, I went and I looked up some articles on this issue. The prostitution and brothel issue inside of the Shoguanas and Central region. One of the early articles I could have pulled up with this was from since 2015. Ramona struggles with drug blocks, brothels, human trafficking. Hundreds of millions of dollars have already been spent in Couva North constituency in infrastructural development, water projects, and street lighting programs. But according to MP for the area, Ramona Ramdial, in spite of all the developmental works and improvement, she has been facing challenges with brothels, drug blocks, human trafficking, and the slow disbursement of allocations to a constituency. This is since 2015 we are talking about here. The MP for the district has been complaining about brothels. Now, here's the thing. A drug block is still harder to batten now. You have to kind of catch the men in the act. A drug block could be a bit of a mobile thing. The guys could be standing at this corner. They could run into a dark alley. All right, okay, grand. A brothel isn't something that is that easy to hide and move. It's a whole building. You go inside of the building there and the proof and evidence is kind of right there, literally in front of your face. The evidence literally dances for you to see it. So, the evidence of a brothel is not a difficult thing for you to see. But the MP for this district has been complaining since 2015. But that wasn't her last complaint. In 2020, Ramdale, 3 brothels in my constituency need to be shut down. Couva North MP Ramona Ramdale said despite her best efforts, she has been unable to get 3 brothels in her constituency shut down. She was contributing to a debate. She said the 3 brothels every year would get their liquor license approved and use it as an umbrella for their activities. No matter how many police raids or petitions or policemen support us, we can't get them to shut down. So, Mr. Richie Sukai, do you have a complaint for the former MP of Couva North? Because she voiced concerns about the same thing. And if your complaint is that, no, it's not. Richard Globman says it's hard to prove that they are brothels. It's actually not that hard. It's hard if you don't want to do it. It's not that hard if you want to do it. I remember, I am familiar, I have grown up in many areas where there have been many drug blocks. And something I've regularly noticed is the police protection of some drug blocks. And one of the ways you see the police protection of drug blocks so clearly is that you would see a drug block functioning somewhere for years. And you'd wonder why that kind of close. If you talk to a police, they would say, man, it's so hard to catch these guys. It's just a really hard thing to get done. But then you would see some young guy decides that, you know what? I'm not going to sell for the main drug dealer. I'm going to make a block of my own. And he tries to start with a drug block. And within a week, the police raids his drug block and shuts it down. He makes a month in prison, he comes back out, he tries it again, the police raid him again. The police sees all of the well-established drug blocks, they leave them, and they continually raid this new and upcoming drug block. I'm not talking about something I'm talking about in hearsay. I'm talking about something witnessed. They would raid that early drug block. And you know how simple it's done? An undercover police officer walks up, he asks, hey, where are they, boy? The drug guy pulls out what he had a buy and tries to sell it and clicks, arrested. Simple like that. You have to actually catch the transaction of money. The transaction of money isn't a difficult thing. If you wanted to, this is not a difficult thing. It's very simple. There's literal video footage from inside of these brothels showing the cash transactions, if you're so inclined to view. So, to make it seem, Richard Globman, this is why sometimes I have to say you have to be a police officer. Because to make it seem like it's so difficult to figure out and find a way to button down that prostitution is occurring in an established institution, in an established establishment where prostitution has been ongoing for the last 3 decades. I find that really hard to believe. That the hard thing for the police to figure out here is it's so hard to catch them. This place has been a functioning brothel for the last 30 plus years, but it's so hard to catch them. Yeah, it's so hard to catch them because the police officers go there on their days off. That's why it's so hard to catch them, because the police officers have special deals they get when they go into the establishments. That's why it's so hard to catch them. Richard Globman, I hope your name isn't inside some of these establishments also. I hope so. Police are on the payroll. It's a well-known thing. That's why it's so hard. So to come now, Mr. Globman, and please do not come and say things like this again, make it seem like it's not the fault of police on the payroll why these things cannot happen. It's because we cannot figure out, we just cannot figure it out. We just cannot get the evidence. Please, stop it. Please, cut it out. Cut it out. We know that is nonsense. We know. Stop it. And now, here's the part that I really don't like. For Mr. Sukai over in Shogunas to say that his real problem is with the Prime Minister pointing this out, I don't like that. Because this is a problem that has been highlighted and known in your district where you are the head of the commerce, the business chamber. This has been a problem for a couple decades. So if I was him and I was interested, according to him, he said that the business community partners with the police to stop all different kinds of illicit activities. So, okay, they do not want this kind of illicit activity going on in their district. If I was him, in that case, I would use this as an opportunity to plead with the Prime Minister. Okay, Mr. Prime Minister, as you have rightfully pointed it out, well, help us do something about it. Help us. But no. Everyone speaks. No one does anything. The Prime Minister said when he was speaking about this whole private sector, public sector business, that regularly people talk about doing it, but what we are missing in Trinidad is the can-do mentality where we actually go out there and get the job done. I agree. So we're speaking about the prostitution problem in Shogunas, in the central region. Everyone knows who's going to do something about it. Who is going to actually do something about it? I wait to see. Now, while I wait to see, I don't have much hope. My hopes aren't high while I wait to see. My hopes are actually pretty low. The last story I'm going to do, just a funny little story that I found while I was going around. The final story for the night has to do with some bacchanal with Susu. No one will do nothing, Jason Bourne says. That's kind of where I'm at too. I don't foresee anything happening readily because too many people participate and benefit. That's the whole problem. If you're participating and you're benefiting, well, who's going to do anything? And in that case, here's where I'm at. If we aren't going to do anything about it, then why not make it legal on the law books? Why not? Why are we mamagaying ourselves? Why should we have this thing illegal if we know that it's not really illegal? It's just you just have to pay a fine. It's as it were you just have to pay your registration fee and you could have your brothel if you want. So then might as well make it legal, eh? Kyle, I not with you and that talk. All right, some bacchanal went on with a Susu down library. Well, that wasn't recently. That was actually a long time ago. But I found the lessons that could be learned in this to be valuable. I found the lessons that could be learned from this case to be actually pretty valuable. Compensation for library sisters as owing Susu Han leads to bad larceny charge. Two library women who are arrested and charged with a slew of offenses, including larceny, after one of them took a flat screen television from the home of a friend who failed to contribute to a weekly Susu Han, will each receive compensation for malicious prosecution. On Tuesday, Justice Frank Sipasat, in an oral decision, ordered the state to pay Nafika and Joy Huggins a total of $110,000 plus interest and costs for their November 18, 2011 arrest and detention for 4 days on charges of resisting arrest, assaulting the police, escaping lawful custody, using obscene language, and larceny of the 42-inch flat screen television. Now, what the judge is saying there is that whole list of charges that I read out there was actually put in maliciously. 2011. The sisters were eventually cleared of the charges and filed a malicious prosecution claim against the state. So what the sisters are alleging is that the charges of resisting arrest, assaulting the police, escaping lawful custody, obscene language, and the larceny charge were all placed maliciously. Now, why were they placed maliciously? It's an interesting thing. Damn, I now did SE. Whoa, you're a young one, ain't you? 2011, I was not doing SE. I was well out of SE. I was well out of school already. In his ruling, Sipasad said the law on malicious prosecution was clear and the court had to determine if the police had a reasonable and probable cause to charge the woman and if the charges were maliciously laid on the part of the officers. He said he paid attention to the station diary entries presented at the trial, which was held virtually last week. Sipasad said he also considered the evidence of the woman, who were demonstrably calm and rational and willing to comply with the police on the night of the arrest. He said he found it difficult the woman had engaged in the type of behavior alleged by the police when they voluntarily allowed the police into their home without a warrant. Now, here's why this case is giving me hope. This case actually gives me some hope. This case actually gives me some hope, because what the justice is saying here is what the justice is saying here is that he actually paid attention to what the police were saying versus the evidence of what actually happened that night. So what the police said happened versus the clear demonstrable evidence of what occurred that night. Okay, they allowed the police to enter their premises without a warrant. They were evidently calm and rational while speaking to the police. There was no other incident. So then how could the police say that they resisted arrest, cussed them up, and escaped custody? It doesn't make sense. I like that. And this actually sounds hopeful, because I am sure many of us would be very familiar with some people like Richard Glubman over sorry, Richard, but many officers in Trinidad and Tobago who abuse their duty just like this and do this very same thing. Come and abuse you and then accuse you of obscene language, resisting arrest, abusing the police, etc., etc., etc. So it's very hopeful that we could see within our country, within the purview of our legal system, that a justice could do something like this. Sipasad also said, based on the evidence, the issue of the susu came up, and the fact that the television this is the part that I kind of enjoyed this part. Good night, Lee, forever board. The issue of the susu came up, and the fact that the television was taken by one of the sisters until the obligation to pay the outstanding hand was met. He said the essential elements of self-remedy and self-help could only be exercised in the clearest of circumstances, and warned, so this was his warning, and warned that not because a susu hand was owing, anyone can take it upon themselves to take up an item such as a television. So, if somebody owing you a susu hand, you cannot just run out there and pick up their television. There are laws to do this thing. He put that warning out there. He put that warning there, just by the way. You cannot just run out there and pick up the TV because they owe you susu money. He said charges of breaking and entering or any associated charges could have been used. But in this case, it was difficult to understand how the police could have reasonably considered guilt of larceny when Nafika said she did not intend to keep the television, though unjustified, until the hand was paid. So, what the court is saying there is that the charge of larceny, which is basically theft, does not add up, because you are the lady in this case, Miss Nafika, one of the sisters, said very clearly that she had no intention of stealing the television. Larceny is theft of personal property. She wasn't looking to steal it. No, Richard Glubman, she wasn't looking to steal it. If you listen to what the judge says, and this isn't a police speaking about the law, this is a judge speaking about the law in this case. He is saying that she made it clear her intention wasn't to steal this. This was basically surety for the owed money. And what the justice said is he would have understood it even more if they tried the charges of breaking and entering, because the sisters would have had to break and enter into someone else's home to get the television. So breaking and entering would have still made more sense. Sipasad said there was no urgency to lay the charges, and the police could have taken the television pending further investigations, as the policy that they intervened to keep the peace in the community was highly unusual, given that they did not speak with Nafika before arresting her and her sister. Something doesn't add up. something doesn't add up. They could have seized the television. The judge is, as it were, helping police. The judges, as it were, helping the police know how they should treat a case like this. They could have seized the television, done some further investigation, and then come back with their results and their charges. There was no urgency to charge in a case like this. Police officers exercise, and listen to this statement by the judge and tell me if it isn't similar to my Gulliver Travel analogy. Police officers exercise tremendous powers in the discharge of their constitutional obligations. This imposes on them an obligation to act fairly and with utmost impartiality. He said the rule of law mandated that police act without bias and consistent with their oath. There can be no room for insinuation of impropriety or use of personal relationship to color the way they interact with the public or investigate a matter. It seems like there's a suggestion here that the police may have had some bias in how they handle this. But that statement actually leans, I think, perfectly into my Gulliver Travels analogy. The police would be a next one of those giants in society. Because of the disproportionate amount of power, of legal power, the police have in our society, they are another case of giants inside of our society. Giants that need to be very careful about each step they take. And giants who we need to be looking at very, very particularly. And I hate the idea anytime a police suggests that we should not be looking at them as intently as we should. You should be paying attention to every single step a police officer makes. They have too much power to allow them to make missteps. With great power comes great responsibility. Correct. He also said, the justice also said, the search of the fridge in the woman's home was odd. Especially when the television was on the bed. So apparently the police searched the people them fridge. What the police was doing in the people fridge? The court is not comfortable with the position advanced by the defendants as it related to the factual matrix of what unfolded. He also said other elements of the arrest and rationale for the charges lacked clarity. He believes the charges were laid because, listen to this, he believes, this is the judge speaking here, he believes the charges were laid because one of the sisters used her cell phone to take photos of what was happening at the home. That's the reason the judge believes. This is the judge speaking. This is the Justice Frank C. Prasad speaking. This isn't me. He is saying from the evidence that he saw, he wasn't even there, but obviously some amount of evidence that he saw led him to believe that the charges the police laid were because one of the sisters was taking pictures. I don't think Justice Frank C. Prasad is a family friend of Natif, what were the names? Nafika and Joy Huggins. I don't think he's a family friend, honestly. I just think he is making his judgment in this case and he isn't going along with the police, and I like it. I really do like it. I hope that in most of the cases, if people go to our court system, this is the kind of judgment we see, that the judge obviously looks carefully at the case. Not that they innocently do anything to police officers, but they give a very fair view of the entire case. This seems to be what was going on here. The judge said it seemed like the police issued these charges because one of the sisters was taking out pictures, referring to international events involving improper police behavior being captured by civilians. He said it was more likely than not the officers took issue with one of the sisters' actions leading to an altercation. In her evidence, Nafika said their now deceased mother operated the weekly susu, which saw a payout of $12,000. The television's owner collected her hand, but after that failed to contribute to the susu. Nafika also said she knew the money was used to buy the television, which she took until the woman paid her money. So, home girl join the susu, take a early hand, buy a TV, and stop paying the susu. Moms call her two daughters. The daughters say, well, we will handle this. We are going to be the bailiff on the scene here. They went in, they took the TV. It seems like maybe the owner of the TV may have had some police contacts. They called their police contacts. The police went down. It seems like the sisters tried to record what the police were doing in their home. The police didn't like that. There was an altercation that occurred according to the justice. And after that altercation, these charges were laid. Now, this gives me hope, but at the same time, this is so scary. Let's read the list of charges here. Let me see if I could find the list of these charges again. Resisting arrest, assaulting the police, escaping lawful custody, using obscene language, and larceny. These 5 charges, if these 5 charges were to stick, how long do you think these two sisters would have spent in prison? And if some police officers are willing to issue 5 charges maliciously because a woman was attempting to record them, what do you think they would do with a man if they had the opportunity to? That is so scary. To think that we have officers who would be willing to watch someone and knowingly look at this person and condemn them to losing years of their lives' freedom. That is evil. Anyone doing something like that, I think they need to lose their job and go to jail themselves. That is straight up evil. For you to watch someone knowing they are innocent and attempt to put them away from their freedom for years of their life, you are an evil person. You are an evil person. And you need to be put out of the service for good. And you need to go into prison. That's where you need to be. False charges should be imprisonable. They should be something that you should go to prison for. All right. That's all I have to say on that. That's all I have for now. Thank you very much. For those of you over on Instagram and over on YouTube, thank you for joining in. That's all I have for now. Join me again tomorrow for the next Mindful Live at anywhere between 9 and 9:30 p.m. We usually start somewhere around that point. Be sure to tune in. If you're over on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment if you have something to say, and I will see you again tomorrow. Peace.